Hi, everybody. It's Jean Chatzky. Welcome to Your Money Map, sponsored by the Alliance for Lifetime Income. Well, it has been a minute since we have all been together. Very glad to be with you today, broadcasting on LinkedIn, but also on Facebook. As always, we welcome you in this conversation. Talking about money is a lot harder than it should be. And so if you have questions about your personal finances as we dive into our topic today, I hope that you'll just chime in. You can send them to us in the chat. We will weave them into the conversation. We'll try to get you as many answers as we possibly can. As many of you probably know, February is Black History Month. And so we thought it was a terrific time to focus some attention on the racial wealth gap and the retirement wealth gap, which is a term that maybe you haven't heard before. We know that there is a retirement security crisis facing Americans across all demographics, but we also know that Black Americans face unique circumstances and unique struggles when it comes to both saving and planning. Just a few quick statistics for all of you to set this up. In 2016, the typical Black household approaching retirement had 46%, just 46% of the retirement wealth of the typical white household. And that gap has grown in the years since. It's grown in the pandemic as the pandemic has made things even worse. And many Black women in particular have found themselves forced out of the workforce because of childcare needs, because of caring for older parents at home, and because if somebody was going to stay home to manage the household, it was going to typically be the lower earning spouse. And in most cases, because of the pre-existing gender wealth gap, that is usually the woman. Black retirees in particular are especially likely to lack resources. Research that we've pulled from the University of Massachusetts in Boston found that 2/3 of single Black retirees have incomes below the elder index, which is a data set that is aiming to measure the capacity of older people to just cover their basic living expenses. But of course, on this show, on Your Money Map, we don't want to just pose questions. We want to bring you answers. And in order to do that today, to help me do that, I've got a wonderful guest. Let me tell you a little bit about Jennifer Streaks as I bring her in. She is a personal finance expert. She is a columnist for The Street. She focuses on long-term investing. She's appeared on many television networks, which is why if she looks familiar to you, that's where you've seen her. She's been on CNBC, MSNBC, BBC America, Fox, and many others. She's also got a book called Thrive Affordably, Thrive ... Affordably, your month-to-month guide to living your best life without breaking the bank. And just in case we need it, she also happens to have a law degree. So Jennifer, welcome. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me. I just love the topic that you've chosen for this month.
Talk to me a little bit about how we got here. The racial wealth gap is not new. In fact, it's many, many decades old. How did we get to where we are right now?
I think what you're seeing is just the culmination of baked in financial inequality, systemic financial inequality that has affected minorities, particularly Black Americans, to the 10th degree. And that's why you're seeing Black Americans, they're working a lifetime, but still coming up short in retirement because they were placed behind the 8 ball from the beginning.
Placed behind the 8 ball by history, actually. I mean, when we look back at history, back to the time of Abraham Lincoln, the Freedmen's Bank
Mhm.
where Black Americans placed millions and millions of dollars that was essentially stolen from them, set people back. We had decades of Jim Crow laws. I mean,
Mhm.
as you look at history, do you tie it directly, of course, to what is happening today? And are there other things that have happened in our past that you blame for what is happening right now?
I mean, definitely, Jim Crow was legalized racism. Basically, it brought in discrimination in housing, jobs, and wages, where it was okay to pay someone wages that a white man would not accept. So when you have that baked into a system, and even in 2022, when you're hearing this person is the first black this person is the first black that, still in 2022 it comes from Jim Crow and jobs that we were just not even considered for. So it's historical, and it's coming to bear today.
When we talk about the racial wealth gap, it ties directly to the racial retirement gap. And David John, who is a senior strategic policy advisor at the AARP Public Policy Institute, says that he believes there are three main factors driving this racial retirement gap. Um, a matter of financial health, a matter of access, and a matter of income. When you look at the racial retirement gap, can you dig into those factors a little bit
Mhm.
for me? And if you see any other contributing factors, I'd love you to elaborate.
Okay, sure. Keep me on track with the three factors too. With
Okay.
the first one is financial health. You're talking about your emergency fund, your credit, having car insurance, enough health insurance. Many people are one paycheck away from being homeless because everything is paycheck to paycheck to paycheck. You don't have an emergency fund. You don't have 2 or 3 months worth of rent saved up, or even car payments. If you get in a car accident, you don't have enough health insurance. So now you have this huge medical bill. So this is what prevents individuals from saving and being able to establish an emergency fund, establish a 401k, can keep contributing to a 401k, and even investing. And so number two is
Access. But let me just say before we dig into access, I love that as you frame financial health, you start
Mhm.
with the basics of budgeting
Yes.
and making sure that your high interest rate credit card debts are satisfied and that you have an emergency cushion. So often when we talk about financial health or financial wellness, I think
Mhm.
people go directly to the 401k as the
Mhm.
solution without recognizing that there are many, many people who can't even get to the 401k.
Exactly.
Many people who can't get to the point where they can make contributions because they don't have the foundation. So
Right.
financial health is that foundation.
It
The
is.
the second factor is access.
Access. When you think about being able to go into a bank and get a loan, if you want to start a business, which a lot of people were forced to do actually during the pandemic, and if you don't have any sort of investment, money, you're going into your own pocket to fund your business. You are getting in debt on credit cards to fund your business, or you're going to family and friends to fund your business, where you should have the same access as anyone else to start a business, being able to go into a bank, a credit union, get a grant, go to the SBA, just like anyone else. But that is not the case. Increasingly, more and more, we're seeing that that is not the case.
And the third factor is income.
Income. This is staggering. The wage gap is what is keeping individuals from being able to save. Even in the case of Black women, they make 65 cents compared to a white man that makes an entire dollar. Over a 40-year career, that's almost $1 million in lost wages. That's your retirement right there.
That's right.
That you just never received. So this income gap is what is stopping so many from being prepared for life down the road.
Well, and when you look at the income gap, you can
Mhm.
connect it directly to the wealth gap. You can connect it directly to the amount of savings that households have. I mean, when we look at the amount of savings that a Black household has compared with a white household, there is a huge disparity.
A huge disparity. If white households have 3 to 4 times the savings of Black households, you have Black households that are reaching 50s, 60s, 70s, and they have no savings. And they're still paying the same types of bills, whether it's mortgage, rent, car payments. And so they're still in this cycle of paying bills and not saving. So they're never, not only do they not catch up, they never get ahead.
So let's talk a little bit about all of these factors in light of the fact that we are still in the midst of a pandemic. I mean, how did the pandemic impact the racial wealth gap and the racial retirement gap?
The pandemic nearly wiped out the Black middle class because you had individuals that worked at, let's say, at front facing jobs during the pandemic before the vaccine, and they either could not work anymore, didn't want to take the risk, or that business totally closed down. So you left a large segment of the population that didn't have a job at all, let alone saving. So the pandemic, we just weren't prepared. We were not prepared because we didn't have the savings to back us up, and we didn't have the type of income to even deal with it. So it set us back just terribly.
I know that the stimulus programs have put a lot of money into a lot of hands through the pandemic and the different relief programs. And when you look at how people have fared during the retirement, we see that it was by and large a K-shaped recovery, that it was that there was one segment of the population who could stay employed, who could work from home, who didn't have to spend money on travel and on entertainment, and that was actually able to do quite well, to take some of that additional money to invest it in a stock market that was just going up and up and up and up. That was able to pad the savings accounts that they had in their bank. And there was another segment of the population, people who worked in industries where they were not able to work remotely, where those industries in some cases shut down, where the stimulus dollars were not enough to provide that additional buffer. Was that portion of did Black Americans by and large fall into that description?
We did. I mean, the stimulus was basically enough, maybe, to keep your head above water, to maybe keep the status quo. But there was no saving money or taking this money and investing in the stock market and anything like that. You were using that money to buy groceries, to buy medications, to keep your lights on. So once again, you get just enough, a bare minimum, to basically to exist, but not to thrive.
How did Black-owned businesses fare?
A lot of Black-owned businesses had to shut down because they were brick and mortar, or they just weren't ready to be able to respond to this pandemic. If you were not already online, if you did not already have a large Instagram following or a shop on Facebook where people could just immediately pivot to your site and immediately start buying, then you were left in the lurch. And a lot of companies, a lot of businesses shut down during the pandemic.
As we have started to come out of this pandemic, what changes in the financial habits of Black Americans have you noticed? And maybe even take it back since the beginning of the pandemic. What changes in habits have you started to pick up on in your reporting and document as you write for The Street and comment on MSNBC?
Just more saving, really having an interest in saving more money, budgeting, just really trying to be aware, more aware of money. I'm getting emails and DMs on Instagram. Okay, what should I do with this credit card debt? I've got to get out of debt. People that might have lived or skated on their credit cards during the pandemic, now they're like, okay, that's over with. Not the pandemic, but just living like that and saying, I want to be better prepared for anything. Not we may not have another pandemic in our lifetime.
Let's hope.
Let's hope, yes. But you could have a job loss. You could have a major illness. You may have something that takes you out of making money right now as you are used to. And so you have got to have savings. That's why I always stress an emergency fund. That is the first thing that you do, is that emergency fund. You set up that 3 to 9 months of savings that cover, everything from rent to lunch to everything, whatever your life is, and be realistic about it. And have that money socked away in an account that you cannot easily access, because that is going to be your safety net. Even if you have to withdraw from your 401k, there are taxes, there are penalties associated with that. It's not an immediate process sometimes. So that savings account is going to carry you. You can go right to the bank and get it. You can have a debit card right to it. You don't have to go through a process to get your money if you need it right then.
If you don't have an emergency cushion at this point, what's the best way to start to cobble one together? And where, in these days where interest rates are still, demoralizingly low, should you keep it?
I would say that right now, I would tell you to keep it in your emergency funds. Is for you to easily access. It's not a CD account. It's not a stock account. It's not an IRA. It's in your savings account. Maybe it's at, different from your everyday savings, so that you're not grabbing it all the time. But the first way to get started is that you have to be realistic about your budget and really find out where there's money that you can stop spending. We all have that, especially for those of us that were sitting home, whether it's the Hulu account, whether it's the eating out, whether it's the takeout, the HelloFresh, whatever it is, there's something that you can cut back on. Look at your cable bill, look at your cell phone bill. There's something that you can start cutting back on. Even if you start an account with $100, $50 even, and you dedicate yourself every 2 weeks, I am going to start socking some level of money away. What you don't want to feel like is that this is too big of a mountain to climb. You have to get started.
Yeah, 100%. We've got a question from Anne on Facebook, and she'd like to know, actually, she's asking an important trade-off question here.
Mm-hmm.
How do you set up an emergency fund when you have no savings or retirement to draw from, and you're still paying catch up on credit cards? In other words, if you've got that high interest rate debt,
right,
and you've got no emergency fund, where's the balance? How do you draw the line?
That's the thing, because you have to pay off your high interest debt. You've got to start to get rid of that. So you're going to start to chip away at that and still set up the emergency fund at the same time. You may not be able to put as much in the emergency fund as you would like immediately, but then once you pay off the high interest debt, you take that money that would have gone to that, now that's cleared out, and you start putting it right into your emergency fund. So you can do both things. But right now, the priority is just going to be getting rid of the debt. And then you just take that and put it in the emergency fund once it's paid off.
Yeah, because, Anne, the return on paying off that debt is equal to the interest rate on the debt, right? So if you're paying off debt at 18%, that's like putting an 18% return in your pocket, and it's guaranteed. And you're not getting anything like that from the bank. But Jennifer, of course, is right. I mean, the way to do this is to divide and conquer and put a little bit into that emergency fund every single time you get paid. Jennifer, my preference is always to do this automatically.
Exactly.
Yeah, if you have the opportunity to split your paycheck at work, which some employers will do these days, and put money into that emergency account, just as it puts money into your 401k, I would say go for it, because automatic means it happens.
Right. I totally agree.
I know that one of the things that you've noticed since the pandemic began is that Black Americans, like younger Americans, are investing more in individual stocks.
Mhm.
And you said that blew you away.
It did, because with my advice, I always say if you're investing in the stock market, it has to be money that you can afford to lose, because nothing with the stock market is guaranteed. You could have the best tip, it's still not guaranteed. But there are certain things that are guaranteed: an emergency fund, your credit, buying a home the right way. And I just think that there's so many other things to get right first on that financial health list before we think about investing in the stock market. Do you have enough insurance? Do you have enough car insurance? If you own a home, does your homeowner's insurance cover if you had a flood in the basement as opposed to a flood from the roof? They're two different things, and insurance companies handle them differently. Do you know that? Those things cost you lots of money in real time if you are not prepared. So I just think on that financial preparedness list, there's so many other things to get to first before you think about investing.
And let's make sure that we're being clear here. When you're talking about investing, when you're talking about
Mm-hmm.
buying individual stocks, you're talking about opening a brokerage account and buying individual stocks. You're not equating that to making a 401k contribution and
No,
investing that way.
no, they're two totally different things. Your 401k investment is going to come out of your paycheck. That should already be set up, like you said, automatic. It happened. I'm talking about individuals that I'm hearing because we've all been sitting home and reading this and watching that, and they're saying, "Oh, I'm going to buy some Apple stock, or I'm going to get some of that Netflix stock." And I'm thinking to myself, "Okay, well, I mean, are all your credit cards paid off? Do you have your emergency fund 3 to 9 months already set up? Do you have enough health insurance?" I mean, I just think there's so many other things to think about first.
You're really talking about the building blocks of a
Correct.
good, solid financial life. And one of those building blocks for many people, and Anne, by the way, said thank you. She's going to pay off the debt first. It'll take years, but she's going to do it.
Good.
And she'll make a weekly contribution to her emergency fund. Oh, she says that won't happen because she doesn't get a paycheck. She's a freelance writer. And
Mhm.
when you get money in as a freelance writer, try to just siphon a little
Little
bit. And
bit.
every time you get paid, treat it like a paycheck. Every
Exactly.
time you get paid, move some of that into your emergency fund. So it won't be weekly, but it'll be sporadic, and hopefully it'll grow in just the same way. A home, Jennifer,
Hmm.
is an important building block for many people.
It is.
We talked a little bit about how barriers to home ownership for Black Americans have existed for decades,
Hmm.
for more than decades. And so, um, how's the situation now? And if buying a home is on your list of to-dos, how do you step by step your way there?
Well, the first thing you've got to do is check your credit, because you want to make sure that you are able to get the best interest rate. That is, when you're talking about if you're going to do a 30-year mortgage, your interest rate is very important. You want to make sure you have the best credit. And also, you need to make sure you're saving money for a down payment.
Okay, so
Uh,
those are two specific things. Let's break them down.
mhm.
Making sure you have the best credit. Um, I know there are a lot of people who look at that 850 credit score and just aim for it.
Yeah,
Doesn't have to be that high. You can
it
have
doesn't.
excellent credit and still be in the high sevens or low eights. But let's say you're not there yet and you want to get there. What do you
Hmm.
have to do?
Obviously, pay all of your bills on time, consistently, every month without fail. That is the first thing. That's the first thing that the credit report shows, is how you pay your bills. The next thing is going to be your credit utilization. How much of your available credit are you using? And it may be frustrating to say, I've got this $10,000 credit card, but if I have $6,500 on it, I'm going to get a ding on my credit report because they're saying that my utilization is too high. But that's what happens. That's the system. If you're
Where should your utilization be?
between 10 and 30%,
So
And
if you've got that $10,000 credit card, you want to be using no more than $3,000 of your
$1,000.
credit line. Okay.
Correct. Correct. At any given time. And if you can pay it off, use it and pay it off. But by the time it reports to your credit, you need to be within that 10 to 30% level. And that's it. That's your utilization. And those two things are going to be the most important. There's some things sometimes with a credit mix, but if you don't own a home, that you can't help that at the time. So the most thing, what you pay attention to the most is paying your bills on time
Mm-hmm.
and your credit utilization. And those things you're going to see your credit score go up. It's a process. It's not a quick process at all, but be consistent and it will go up over time.
Okay. All right. That sounds great. As far as down payments go,
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of information out there that people throw around. How much do you really need in order to qualify for a mortgage?
Well, if you're doing FHA, that's 3%. But if you're doing conventional, you're going to want to shoot for 10 to 20%. The banks want to see that you have got skin in the game too. They want to see that you are financially able to handle this home. And the number one thing they're going to look at after your credit is, does this person have a reasonable down payment? If you're saying, if you came to me and you wanted, a $350,000 loan, but you didn't have anything, why would I just give you that? Oh, okay, I'm just going to give you that. And you don't have any skin in the game. You haven't proven to me that you are responsible enough to take care of this home by taking the time and saving up for it and putting some of your energy behind it. So those are going to be the two things, your credit and a down payment, and just making sure that you get a good interest rate.
When you are out in the market shopping for a home these days, it's pretty daunting.
Mm-hmm.
We're starting to read a lot of stories about buyers who got in the last year who are now regretting,
Mm-hmm.
oh, they paid too much, or they don't like the location, or they
Mm-hmm.
waived the inspection. What's your advice for a would-be buyer in this market?
Take your time. There is no rush. The work from home situation caused a frenzy when it came to homes and the type of homes, and everyone wants to buy a house now because I want to work from home, or I can work from home or work remotely. Let this frenzy pass. Okay, it's okay. A home, or the idea of buying a home, can be there next year, can be there 2 years from now. The most important thing when you do buy your home is that you can afford it, and then that you can take care of it, and that it is a positive and not a negative, and that you don't end up with buyer's remorse.
So let's say we put it all together, Jennifer.
Mhm.
We've got our debt under control. We're starting to save. We've got a home that we've purchased. We're paying it down. How do we as it, how do we approach putting together a holistic plan for our retirement
Mhm.
that makes sure that we have enough money, not just accumulated in an account, but that money will last us as long as we live?
Okay. Well, the first thing, I think you really need to look at your life and your lifestyle and say to yourself, what is it that I'm trying to achieve in my retirement? Do I want to maintain the same lifestyle that I'm living now? Do I want to add travel into the mix? Do I maybe want to start a business or some sort of hobby that I'm really interested in? Because all that's going to factor in. And once you start saying, okay, I'm going to start saving towards my retirement, I would advise anyone to get a financial advisor on board so they can say, okay, this type of account will be better. Are you risk averse? Can you have medium risk, high risk? How many years do you have left to actually save for retirement? That's also going to affect how you save and the accounts that you save in and the type of risk that you can bear. So I think it's important to bring on a financial advisor during that time too.
I could not agree with you more. I think particularly for people who find themselves 10 years away from retirement,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and they're thinking, okay, I'm doing a pretty good job, right? I've done my work. I've been
Mhm.
contributing steadily to my retirement plans. Maybe I've even been amassing some wealth outside of my retirement plans. I've paid off my high interest rate debt. I've got my life insurance in place. I've got my long-term care insurance in place. And yet I am not sure that I've done it right. I'm not
Right.
sure if my money is going to last as long as I do. Bringing a financial advisor into the equation at this point is so helpful. And if you're looking for one, you can go to our website, which is
Mhm.
protectedincome.org, and it'll lay out a series of questions for you that you can ask any advisor that you're considering working with to make sure that they are the right advisor for you. One thing we talk a lot about on this show, Jennifer, is this idea of taking whatever money you've amassed and making sure that it lasts as long as you do. There are a number of ways to do this. We've talked about withdrawal strategies.
Mhm.
We've talked about annuities for guaranteed income.
Mhm.
What do you find people? What do you suggest that people take a look at?
I like the idea of an annuity because it is, guaranteed income. It's, you don't have to take everything out. You don't have to leave everything in. It's totally on your schedule and it's guaranteed. It keeps everything together and solid like you want it. And I just think it's a really intelligent plan and a really great way to make sure that your money lasts. So that's my number one strategy typically.
Yeah, that combined with waiting to take Social Security is
Mhm.
often a good way to find your way to success. I
Mhm.
know that you are in the trenches. You are reporting and writing on personal finance in your columns every single week. What are you looking into now? What do you think are the hot topics that people should be talking about, should be paying attention to, and maybe aren't listening hard enough?
I know we've been hearing about inflation, 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 but I think we really need to start paying attention to how it is going to affect us in the everyday. I think sometimes when we hear things on the news or we read them, we think, oh, that's so far off in the distance, or that's really not going to trickle down. It's going to come down. We're starting to see it in our groceries, we're starting to see it at the gas tank. And once again, that's something that's going to affect your pocketbook and your ability to save. I always write on what I call sort of like breakfast table topics. And it's where it hits you where you live. Groceries, your ability to pay your bills, your ability to save money, health insurance. And this is how you keep your life, the financial building blocks, as you call them. And once you have those in place, they will pay dividends like no stock. And so that's why I'm always preaching that the financial building blocks.
Yeah, it's all about good habits. And I'm struck too when we talk about those grocery prices
Yes.
that there's this statistic that gets thrown around a lot about how 40% of the food we buy goes to waste,
Hmm.
right? If we could just eat that, we would not have a problem with our food budget.
Correct. And just making groceries last longer. Maybe, cooking more at home, buying in bulk, taking advantage of stock up sales at the grocery store. And really, like I said, I can't stress it enough. Making that food last longer, putting them in containers. If you have to freeze food, do that. And that way you're not shopping as much and being willing to cook at home. I think we got so comfortable during the pandemic with these takeout services and ordering food. And now we need to back off of that and get back to home.
Yeah, 100%. I actually found myself cooking more during the
Mm-hmm.
pandemic
Mm-hmm.
because I wanted, first of all, I didn't want to go to restaurants. And second of all, I was living in the suburbs where the takeout options were pretty bad.
Oh.
But I also didn't want to go to the grocery store that often. And so I found
Mm-hmm.
myself making lists, doing meal planning,
Right.
things that your grandmother did, but by the way, that save you money. And the same was true of exercise.
Correct.
During the pandemic, when we
Mm-hmm.
couldn't go to the gym, we went out for a walk or out for a run, free exercise, but just as effective.
And
So I'm with you.
exactly. I agree. I mean, I have so many friends that have gotten rid of that $150 a month gym membership. I mean, I live in Brooklyn. Prospect Park is right there. and it's beautiful. Take a walk, a run, city bike. You save. That is when you're looking for a place to say, oh, where can I save money? Where can I get money from? That is a quick way to save about $100 a month.
Jennifer Streaks, thank you so much. Where can we find out more about you and your terrific work?
Well, of course, it's jenniferstreaks.com, my own personal website. And I'm always on LinkedIn and also Instagram at jstreaks.
Thank you so much for being here. And for all of you who are looking for additional information, I invite you to check out our website. It's protectedincome.org. Thank you so much for being with us today, and we
Thank
will see you
you.
next time. All right.
Mhm.
Bye, everybody.